please feel free to ask them. And as we get going here, like I said earlier, I'm always very curious to see how far our reach is on these virtual events. So please feel free to put your location, if you'd like, into the group chat, so that way we can have an idea of where everybody's joining us from today. All right, and we are live to YouTube. So how has it been where you are, Charlena? And am I pronouncing your name correctly? Is it Charlena, Charlena?
Charlena, yeah, you said it right. Charlena. Yeah, we're here in Colorado.
We're in Colorado.
Yep, we're in Colorado, right outside of Denver. And so the weather has been pretty good. Yeah, not too muggy. I know it's crazy on the East Coast now with the heat wave. And so we're happy to be here in Colorado. Where are you calling in?
I'm in Ohio. So smack dab in the mid. Well, I guess we're not actually the Midwest, but I've always grown up calling it the Midwest.
Okay.
But like very, very muggy, not a lot of, there's like no breeze right now. So it feels a lot hotter than it honestly is.
Yeah. I grew up in Philadelphia, East Coast.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, we know with that humidity.
I lived in Delaware for almost a year and it was staggering. Like it was like Florida heat and humidity, but like no beaches, at least not where we lived. We lived in Wilmington, but not very far from Philly, actually.
Nice. That's where my mother is now, Wilmington.
Yeah. Does she like it?
They like it. Yeah. Yeah.
It was a really interesting place. I'm from the Midwest. I'm born and raised here. I went to Indiana for college, so I've been like Midwest my whole life, and I kind of didn't understand or didn't like really internalize the fact that like East Coast people, well, Midwest people are really friendly and will talk to you about anything. And I'm a talker. I will talk to anybody. And it was like pulling teeth to meet people on the East Coast. It was insane.
That's how it is.
It got to the point where I would take my dog everywhere with me because like people would talk to the dog when they wouldn't interact with me at all. And so I'd like use him as like my jumping off point of like, oh yeah, this is Radar and he's a Frenchie. We're from Ohio. What's, you know.
That's awesome.
All right, so it is 1 o'clock. We're gonna get started here. Thank you to everybody who's throwing their locations into the chat. We are all over the map here. This is really cool.
Good.
Canada and Youngstown. Ooh, Youngstown. Thanks, Tiffany. All right, I'm gonna get us launch our recording here and then we will be good to go. All right, okay. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Hi, my name's Meg. I'm here from PowerToFly, and I'm super excited to be hosting today's chat with Charlena. So before we get jumped into the conversation with her, I just want to go over a couple of real quick housekeeping details for everybody. Today is all about our attendees. It's all about our community members, all about you. So to that end, please, please, please feel welcome to turn your cameras on. I love seeing new faces now more than ever. So please feel free to turn your cameras on if you'd like to participate. You are also more than welcome to come off mute and ask questions. Thank you, Nikki, for joining us. So you're more than welcome to come off mute and ask questions or comment however you'd like. The one thing I will tell you is if I'm talking, please feel free to interrupt me. That's what I get paid for, is to be interrupted. But if anybody else is talking, like our speaker or another attendee is asking a question or something, just try not to crosstalk. The other thing I do very much recommend is that if you are not actively speaking to voice a question or a comment or something, please make sure that you are on mute. It doesn't mean you can't come off mute later to ask your question, but it just helps cut down on the audio contamination. I do the same thing even when I'm not speaking, so that you don't hear the 2 bulldogs snoring on the couch 2 feet from my desk. So just keep that in mind. If you do find yourself muted for whatever reason, it's because something was likely contaminating audio. So you are still welcome to participate. Don't feel like you can't. Just make sure, try and be conscious of whatever background noise you might have going on. If you don't have optimal audio or you just don't want to participate that way, that's fine. You are more than welcome to put any questions or comments you have into the Zoom group chat. And if you have a question that you would like to raise for whatever reason and want it to be anonymous, you can send it to me directly instead of messaging everyone in the group chat. You'll just pick my name from the dropdown. It's Meg Alexander _PowerToFly. Last but not least, today is being recorded. So if you are only able to join us for 5 minutes or 35 minutes or the whole hour, no matter what, if anybody that registered for today's event will receive an email with a link to rewatch the recording when it gets posted live on our website. That'll usually take about 1 to 2 business days to come through for everybody. And then if you want to watch it sooner than that, you can head over to our YouTube channel because we are streaming live to YouTube right now. You're more than welcome to share those links anywhere you'd like, send them to friends, family, whatever. It's always free to rewatch the recording, and it's going to be hosted on our website indefinitely. Let's see, I hit the high points. Yeah, I think so. All right, and then I'll introduce our speaker. We'll do a quick note on our questions, and then we will get started. So it is my pleasure to introduce you to Charlena Ortiz. Charlena is the founder and CEO of Grit and Virtue, a personal development company that serves over 100,000 women globally. She is passionate about helping women navigate different seasons of life while pursuing meaningful work with clarity, conviction, and confidence. Grit and Virtue's approach is intentionally designed around 4 core pillars: positive psychology, spiritual formation, ICF coaching standards, and neuro-linguistic programming. So welcome, Charlena.
Hi, Megan. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
All right, so you guys all sent in some amazing questions, and honestly, we were a little overwhelmed with how many really great questions there were. So to make today's chat and learn as conversational as possible, we have combined and condensed all of those questions. We've taken out redundant questions and we tried to organize them into kind of a conversational flow. To that end, if you have a question that you would like to Charlena to answer and you don't hear it being asked, please, please, please put it into the group chat. You can come off mute to ask it. This is true even if we ended up selecting your question to be asked. If if for some reason you raise a question that we're going to cover later on in the slide deck, we'll flag that. We'll let you know. But if you have a question and you're here and you want it answered, this is all about you guys. So please, please feel free to come off mute and ask, or put it into the chat box. So let's get started here with our first question. Charlena, this person asked, how do I get out of my own head and find my true passion? Can you find your passion in your current career field? At times I feel very limited and I don't have a long work history and just feel stuck in one industry.
Yes, this is definitely a loaded question, right? And there's so many different layers to it as well. When it comes to specifically asking, how can I find my passion in my current career field? It depends, right? It depends exactly on your story and your idea of the passions that you may have. And so first I would just say, yes, it's important to get out of your head and explore what are your options that you have when it comes to your current company or your current situation. Maybe there's a way for you to do the work that you're assigned to do, but also take on possibly new projects so that you can dabble and get some experience in another field. For instance, there was a young woman who worked at this more corporate corporation, and she was more on the tech side and tech support, but she had a passion for design. And so what she started to do was build relationships with people that was in their design department. And she started connecting with her and seeing how, she did her work. And then she started to actually ask her, how can I help you in supporting your work in the design? And sure enough, within 6 months, she was then transitioned from this tech supportive role to fully a graphic designer in this company, right? And so she's seen that there was opportunities of interest in her current career situation. And she decided to say, okay, how can I, get to know someone that's actually doing the work? And then actually, okay, how can I actually take work on that's not my assigned, project, but I want to do it because I want to build out my experience. And as far as just getting out of your head, I think, there's just so much when it comes to overcoming, our mindset and negative self-talk or limiting thoughts, that it's this sense of imagine, working in something that you actually love. Imagine doing something that just brings you to life, and allow that to be your fuel to go after it, to go figure it out, to go and dabble in different things. So yeah, that's what I would say.
Thank you for that. Now, we did have a question while you were speaking that I think kind of dovetails nicely with this. Nicole had asked, how do you define a passion and how do we know the difference between having a passion and having a hobby?
Yes. Okay. So this is great. So when you think about your passion, how it aligns to marketplace opportunity, there are three things that you want to consider having. So with anything, you want to make sure that you have the skill set to actually do it, that there is a market to actually, get hired or get compensated for, and then that you're interested, right, which is your passion. If you just have a skill set for it or an interest to build that skill set and an interest, like, and a passion for it, and there's no marketplace opportunity, like people are not purchasing or buying that service or hiring for that position, then that's more of a hobby, right? Something that you could just dabble in and then work on nights and weekends, right? But when you have a marketplace opportunity where people are hiring for that role or people are buying services in that role, you're passionate about it and you have the skill set to do it, then those are the three components to really hone in on to say, okay, this is something that I can actually do in the marketplace versus just dabble in on the side as a hobby. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
We'll talk about the market viability a little bit later, but I think that that's a really good kind of rule of thumb, I guess, which is horrible
Yeah.
phrasing, but it's a really good, kind of guideline to use to figure out whether what you have, and that's not even to say that things that start off as hobbies can't migrate into the passion realm.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's a very good way to put it. So thank you for clarifying that.
Awesome.
Okay, so this next person's question is again kind of in depth. This person said, how do you know when it's time to look for a different job? My current job is extremely stressful day in and day out. My husband and I are trying to get pregnant, so stress like this isn't good for my body. But I feel ungrateful for even wanting to look or apply elsewhere.
Yes. First off, I can definitely relate. And so I had three pregnancies and unfortunately lost two babies to a miscarriage. And I think it was, like we don't know exactly why. But for my third pregnancy, like I was very like adamant about not stressing. Right. And so I took, definitely relate to wanting to not be able to stress in this season of getting pregnant or carrying. So for me, what I learned to do and what I maybe advise or suggest or something for you to consider is really understand first off the season of life that you're in and what boundaries do you need to set so that you can have more peace as you operate in this season. And so maybe that's calling on your husband or your community to support you in ways that maybe you never have thought of before. Right? How can you de-stress yourself before work, during work, and even after work? And when it comes to, so that's what I would just say. First, like really think about the boundaries that you can set and the rhythms that you can set. For me, I definitely had to connect with my faith and really have that as my anchor to carry me through like this season, right? And so that I wouldn't fall into fear and like anxiety, but that I would have the power to carry peace throughout the entire pregnancy. And as it relates to your job, I think like you have full permission to let go of the idea of feeling guilty of like staying or wanting to leave because like studies show that we all have about 2 to 4 careers in our lifetime, right? And so the question is, have you outgrown your current position or have you outgrown your actual career that you're in? And it's okay to give yourself full permission to explore what are some other options that are there. And I would just say go, just start exploring and let go of any guilt or anything like that.
No, absolutely. And I love how you specify, that you have to keep in mind your boundaries, especially in that season of your life, because like, granted, pregnancy and motherhood, and thank you for sharing that, by the way, that's a lot to be vulnerable with. So thank you for trusting us in our community with that information. It's one of those things that, yes, it's not forever, it's a temporary condition, but then it's going to change your life. And so it's quite all right to keep setting those boundaries and keep reevaluating those boundaries, especially when things are changing in your life, because those changes have ripples. They have, they have effects that reach far beyond whatever just the initial thing that's being changed. Yeah. So I think you're right. I think that's a really good way to remind yourself that like, it's okay to keep checking in, and it's okay to set these boundaries and reassess the boundaries and either, move them out or move them in, depending on what's working for you at that point.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also, I mean, like, especially in this person's specific situation, they don't specify if this is their first child, or, if how much of a change this is going to be for your life. But I mean, even if it's not your first child, I don't think that the stress is going to get any less once you get, once the baby arrives. Right. So it's important to note that, like, if you feel like you're underwater now and you then add care and raising and all of the, the tasks involved with rearing a child, yeah, it's unlikely that that's going to get a lot easier just because the baby arrived. So yeah,
that's right.
Yeah. Okay. So this next person's question was, how do you handle having many different passions? Which direction do you choose? So this can be kind of a confusing point for a lot of people, because they might feel like they're drawn to a lot of different things. How is there some way to like evaluate these? Is it more of an option of kind of picking and choosing where your focus lies and changing that up every so often so that you can kind of hit all of your passions, or is there a third option here, basically?
Yeah, this is definitely it would be unique to each person and their season and their situation, right? So depending on what your priorities are for your season, for your family, as far as like, do you need to make an income for your family, right? And so some decisions has to be based out of what your needs are for your family, right? But when it comes to having the space to go after your passion and trying to figure out, okay, do I do this or do I do that? One thought maybe to consider is, what is the bigger vision and the bigger dream of what you would like to accomplish? Because maybe if you know the bigger picture of where you want to go, you can see how possibly you can incorporate all of these different passions into your journey. Maybe not all at one time, but maybe you can build upon them like little by little. So one example is that, so with Grit and Virtue, we have this huge vision of serving women all around the world. And I have so many different ideas and how I want to do that, right? And so for me, it's been very challenging. I'm like, okay, let me paint the big picture, but then where do I start so that I can build upon that? One of the things that I've always been obsessed with has been stationery, and specifically journals. And when I first started Grit and Virtue, I'm like, oh, wouldn't it be awesome to have like this beautiful like stationery, these beautiful journals, a part of Grit and Virtue and like what we offer. Like that was a vision and a passion that I had, but I couldn't get started right away. But I knew that's what I wanted, so that when a door opened or an opportunity came through, I already had in mind, what I wanted to achieve. And so I was able to move in that direction because I already defined the vision that I had. And today we do have a journal collection. You can see a couple of them behind me. And how that happened, it felt like a miracle in how it happened. It was just in conversation and network. And so when I connected with a woman who understood fulfillment and purchasing, like I had an idea that I can present to her, and then she helped me and educated me on the entire process. But if I didn't identify what that passion was and how it could potentially fit in this vision, it wouldn't have came together. And so I would say, think about like, could you start with one thing and bring clarity around it, become a master in it, master it, and actually start producing it or getting results or helping other people get results. And then how can that then build upon the next thing? And hopefully you can all bring all of who you are into the work that you love to do.
Mm-hmm. I love that idea of like kind of having these passions, trying to see if there's a way that they might intersect or that they can work together. And even if they don't, or if something's not really actionable at the moment, I love that idea of like keeping that idea tucked away for a rainy day and continually like kind of going back and being like, all right, is this viable now? Is this something that would work in and help support what I'm doing currently? Or is this like, you know, kind of a wish list item or a someday situation that you like kind of store the ideas away and they'll be useful to you down the road when you're in a better or different position.
Yeah. One thing I would just also add is the sense of like, how do you add strategy to your passion? And so I'm a big strategist. And so for me, you know, when I think about like all these different things that I would love to do, like when you put on the strategy hat, you know, and you think about, okay, how can I create even a blueprint of my life or a blueprint of my future? How does all these things then connect so that it can give you more focus on what to focus on now? Right. And so another passion that you could have is like, you know, I want to host events or retreats. Right. But how does that connect to your passion of communicating, you know, to women maybe, or to men or to families online, right? And so it doesn't mean that you have to choose one or the other. They can actually go hand in hand and support each other.
Yeah, thank you for walking us through that. I think that's a great way to put it, is to add strategy to your passion.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so we talked about this briefly earlier, but we had a lot of questions about how do I know if my idea has a market? Now, obviously there's a lot of places you can Google for like, you know, if you're kind of thinking about starting a business or something like that, but are there certain maybe like checkpoints that you kind of used when you were evaluating your plan?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, you want to know, or ask the question, are there people already purchasing the thing that you want to offer? Just so you know, okay, this is not completely new, right? Like, are there people already purchasing or interested in what you have to offer? Then I would say you have to put on like a validation hat. And so a lot of times we're just thinking about it, you know, in our head, would somebody buy it? You know, would they want it? Would they not want it? And I think the best thing that you can do is actually talk to the people that you're hoping to serve, and getting their feedback and getting in their shoes, learning about the problems and the hair on fire type of problems that they have. And then you can see if what you are thinking about, your idea, actually fit in serving them and giving them a solution for their problem. And so definitely I would recommend talking to those customers, talking to the potential customers, talking to your potential audience, because you would learn so much. If that's the first and only thing you do, like, go do it. Us at Grit and Virtue, I've always talked to women, and we've done surveys, and over 3,000 women participated in these surveys. And these are long form surveys. And, you know, that's one way in how we went into got into their world and really understood their pain points and their struggles, and seeing, okay, how we're positioning ourselves, can this serve them well? So that's one way of thinking about it. And then from a more like tangible, like online perspective is there's this whole idea of like A/B testing. And so a lot of tech companies do this, where you create your idea in an actual landing page, so you have it tangible. And so when you create it in the landing page, you're actually forced to figure out what your offering is, what your message is, the details of your offering. And so you can take just a design file. You don't even have to get it developed, a design file of your landing page, and go use this to talk to customers. Or once you actually develop it, put some Facebook ads around it and see if people actually click on it, to see if this is something that they would actually be interested in, or, you know, if they would buy it.
I love the idea of using that A/B testing model, which, I mean, like PowerToFly uses it too. We test everything from social media posts to our newsletters to, I mean, everything. So I love the idea of using that A/B testing to find out what's going to work best for your potential market, and what people are more likely to be interested in, whatever. Yeah, that's a really good way of approaching it, because that way you're not tying yourself into one specific idea, but you're also getting feedback and, you know, getting information that you can use as you develop further.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes you don't know until you actually start engaging in, you know, your idea and in your project. And once you start engaging, you start to see, okay, is there a viable market or isn't it? And depending on what type of business or mission that you're trying to go after, you can discern if this is something that I want to go down, you know, if this is the path that I want to go down, or do I want to pivot and try a different, you know, idea.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So moving along to our next question, this person said, taking career risks feels so vulnerable. How do you take faithful career risks even when it feels like it might be taking a step back?
Mm. Yeah, so that's really interesting about the idea of taking a step, like it feeling like you're taking a step back. I think you have to determine like what is how would you define the values um, of your career and where you want to go, right? So I think comes back as well to your vision. Where do you want to go? Because if your definition of taking a step back is taking a lower salary or lower, compensation, then you have to weigh that with where you want to go, and if this next career move is actually helping you with connections, experience, and building up your portfolio. Because if that's the case, then it's so much more valuable to have the connections, the experience, and the portfolio rather than a little bit more compensation, depending on where you are and what your financial needs are. But I think you have to really weigh where you want to go, and then how can this career move actually support you and propel you in a better way versus feeling like it's a step back, but maybe it's a step back in one area like compensation, but maybe it's a step forward with connections and resources and building your experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a common thing that we hear people talk about, especially in terms of even just basic career transitions. If you're looking to move from one job to another,
Yep.
that idea of taking a small step backward to get you on, or not even backward, we usually we usually refer to them as like a rear diagonal shift, where you kind of take a step back, but you're moving yourself into a different lane that might have, more career longevity or higher earning potential over the length of the career of the industry. Or, and personally, I mean, I know I get a little bit of a reputation for being kind of a negative Nancy about this kind of thing, but when I'm making these choices, I take a look at what is the worst case scenario, like how horribly could this decision pan out?
Yeah.
Okay, now that I know that, could I live with those results? Is there any place to go from there? Because worst case scenario is very, very rarely scorched earth, nothing to start with. You've completely set yourself back behind the starting line even. Mm-hmm. So if you're fine with doing that, or if you're fine with whatever the outcome, the worst outcome could be, that's usually when I know I've found a choice that I can live with. But it can also help you then evaluate, all right, if I can't live with those consequences, are there steps I can take to help mitigate what those consequences might be? Is there a different way to pursue this so that it's maybe slightly less risk, but the same or greater payoff? Is there a way forward that way?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. All right. So we are getting a lot of people talking in the chat, so I'm going to get us started on one more question and then go back and see what people are saying for now. So this was a really interesting question to me, and I do just want to make a quick call out here. So this person had written in, how can I disentangle my ego-driven ambitions from dreams and desires? Now, when this person had written in originally, and I know that part of your business model revolves around kind of that Christianity focus on what God puts in your heart and whatever. Just out of kind of deference to the fact that we have people joining from all over, we kind of wanted to make this as non-denominational as possible, but still very respectful of the fact that people's religions and their faith systems are very important to them, and it's a way a lot of people make these choices. So I just want to make sure that people are clear that we weren't trying to discount or discredit any section or faction of Charlena's methods and the teachings, but we did just want to be respectful of the fact that we have people joining from all walks of faith. So thank you for sharing this with us.
Yeah.
All right. So to address this question, is there a way that you advise kind of disentangling things that might be dreams that might be more ego-based versus dreams that might be, kind of more in the servant method, I would say, than others?
Yeah. So one thing that comes to mind is this idea of focus on being before doing. And so I think even with COVID, a lot of people has already experienced this, almost like this identity crisis of when things are ripped away, who do you say that you are? Right? When you don't have, your career, or you don't have, the coffee shop that you go to and there's community there, when you don't have all of these different things, you're left with just who you are. And the idea of are you secure in just your being a human being. And then that just comes back to identity. And for those people that are, of the Christian faith, that your identity comes from, above. And then those that, have other faith, there's ways for you to connect with who you are and your identity. And so when I think about identity, there are four A's actually, that I love to talk about. And the first one is just being aware of what you believe about yourself and the limiting thoughts that you have on yourself, right? Two is then alignment. So what is true about who I am? What is true about my identity? Not about what my roles are, but about who I am. For instance, I am enough, right? I am worthy. I am loved. Like, I wake up with purpose in my lungs. Like, those statements are just about who you are, not about what you do. And then the third would be to really start to amplify that truth. Amplify the truth of who you are, because so often we have our negative self-talk or our biggest critic that is just like really loud in our ear saying, who do you think you are? You're not enough, you're not, all these different things. But when we can speak out loud, and affirm our truth, it actually gives us a way to rewire our thinking and to rewire our mind. And so, speak out loud who you are, amplify that truth. And then the third, I would just say, is knowing who you are. Now it's time to take action. And so what action would you take knowing who you are, not how you feel, or knowing who you are, not the negative self-talk or the limiting beliefs that you've been carrying? Yep.
Thank you for that. I think it's really telling that a lot of it requires kind of that self-reflection and not only just coming back to yourself, but coming back to what you're trying to do. So is your goal or is your passion or whatever you're trying to pursue, is it really servicing a need in other people or in a different community or something like that? Or is it primarily something that you want to do for your own glory? I mean, there's not necessarily a wrong answer there, but it's just kind of taking a look to see like, all right, well, if I were able to accomplish this, but I didn't really get a lot of credit for it, would I still be happy with the results? Is it still something worth pursuing that I want to do? If the answer is no, then maybe what you're looking at is more of a self-glorification idea as opposed to something with a real need in the community or a real need in the world.
Yeah. And I think practically one thing that you can like start to experiment with is like giving yourself permission to rest. And so evaluating like, what does rest look like? And if rest really looks like, work, if rest really look like, oh, I'm just going to dabble in this, and it feels, like work, then that's a way for you to evaluate like, okay, where, this is an opportunity for me to be versus do it. And so how do I be intentional about taking real rest and, unplugging so that I can focus on, being connected with who I am, being connected with my faith, being connected with just being before doing. And so one of that measurement can be is, are you actually taking rest? And if not, what does rest look like for you in this season?
Yeah. So Brandy is in the chat asking, Charlena, how long does that process take based on your experience with clients? Now, based on the timestamp here, I think she was talking about like the evaluation stage, not the rest angle. But how, in your experience, how long does that process of like trying to disentangle your dreams and your desires away from like the ego stuff, how long should that or does that usually take?
Yeah, so for us, we have like a 6-month coaching program. And so I would say the first month is really peeling back the layers of what it is that you want and like your desired outcomes. And we start to explore, okay, what are all the different options, right? And then month 2, I would say this is when the work actually begins, right? The rewiring, if it's specifically for identity work, this is where, we go deep dive into peeling back the layers of what are all these limiting thoughts. And then what are the empowering thoughts to to flip the script basically on those negative self-talk. And so I would say about 2 months, you really start to see and peel back the layers of, aligning to truth versus limiting thoughts.
Yeah, for sure. So thank you for detailing that out for us. I do see we have a lot of people asking really great questions in the chat, things about like career changes and things like that. Just as an FYI, I'm putting a link in the chat right now where you can go check out our past Chat and Learn recordings. We have a lot of really good speakers and a lot of really good, we have like profile review videos that are like 30 minutes, and then we've got longer like hour-long Chat and Learns. You can search there for more advice on how to maybe update your resume for a new position, or how to help position yourself as best you can to change industries or change fields. So please take a look at those. You can also email hi@PowerToFly. I'm the one that moderates that email account. So you can email hi@PowerToFly.com if you have further questions or need more direction when it comes to watching those videos. All right, so back to the boundaries idea. This person had asked, how do you maintain boundaries between finding fulfillment from your job and letting it be the thing that defines you? I have trouble separating the personal from the professional and carry work things with me longer than I feel I should.
Yeah, that's an interesting one, because when it's something that you're passionate about, like it's hard to have like a strong, like, this is cut off, at this time, because you're so passionate about that it can carry over into your personal. But when it comes to, just really needing those boundaries so that you can transition and be fully present with family, I think it comes to having intentional like rhythms and routines that you set. So an example of one thing that you can do is when I transition from work to home, do I have 30 minutes to just let things go fully before I actually, well, now you can't. I'm thinking this is after COVID. Mostly everybody's working from home. So it's like when I, close my laptop, is there something, even if it's 5 or 10 minutes, can I just meditate and just like transition and say, okay, what I've done for work is enough for the day. And now I'm going to be fully present. I think you just have to be intentional about how you want to design your life and create your lifestyle around your work. If you see that it's just flooding, your work is just flooding into your home life. But for some cases, sometimes it depends on your work environment, because sometimes it's if you have a spouse or a partner that is very interested in what you're doing, so you're bringing that home and you're talking about, your ideas and what you've accomplished at work, or the ideas that you have and the dreams that you have. So I think it really depends on what it is that you're craving when it comes to boundaries. If you really feel that it's going to serve you well to have some clear boundaries, then, it doesn't have to be, rocket science. It can be, 10 minutes before you transition from, your work to your personal, or from as soon as you wake up in the morning, like what's your morning routine? And I definitely don't recommend that you open up, Instagram or social media or your email right away. Like, how can you have that time for yourself so that you can then focus on being as well before doing? And so really, be intentional about how do you want your life to look like, and design your work around the lifestyle that you want. Because if we let it, work will take over our world.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I used to have this trouble at a previous job where it was just kind of nonstop. I felt like I was always at work, even this is like 5-6 years ago. So like way prior to like me moving to remote jobs or pre-COVID and all that. And one of the things that really worked for me was I bounce ideas off my husband, and he's a really great listener. But he was getting kind of burnt out on the fact that I was constantly talking about work. And so we ended up coming to an agreement of pretty much, I think it was like a 30-minute time limit. I would start a stopwatch literally on my phone for 30 minutes, and we could talk about work for 30 minutes. But then it kind of helped me make sure that I wasn't just rehashing and kind of recircling the same ideas and complaining more than I was trying to problem solve. But it also gave me that time to vent if that's really all I wanted, and I didn't really need or couldn't really identify a solution to these problems from work. At least it gave me, that sounding board, helped me kind of connect with my husband. He had more idea of what I had going on my daily routine and whatever. But then we could do the same for him, and we weren't taking up hours and hours of, our after work time together, but we were connecting and still able to kind of help use each other as sounding boards.
That's really good.
Worked well for me. It doesn't work for everybody, for sure, but yeah.
And I would just say with anyone, trying on different ideas, is to, check in with yourself every week or every 2 weeks to see, my three favorite questions that I love to ask are, what's working well, what's not working well, and what needs to change. And so those are great questions to use when you're evaluating, different goals that you have or different rhythms that you're trying to implement within your life or within your work.
All right, so to our next question, what are the benefits of working with a professional life coach during a career transition or when somebody just simply doesn't know what direction to head in next?
Yeah. So if you can imagine like the arena, analogy of somebody is going in the ring, right? And they're, facing a fight, but then they have their coach right there on the side. And their coach is there to support them, to champion them. And when they're actually out the arena, they're working on strategy, they're working on a plan, right? And so similarly to that analogy, you can see having a life coach, during a time of transition, as someone that's there to give you unbiased, support, someone that's going to challenge you, that's going to champion you, and that's going to encourage you. And it's a sense of like you're actually not doing it alone, because even when we have input from our family members or from our friends, they can be a little bit biased as far as what direction that we want that they, encourage us to go into. But when you work with a coach actually help you create a plan, help you pull out, what's inside of you and what you really want. So peel back those layers and then go out there and support you while you go out there and actually test it out and see what works and what doesn't work. And you come back and then you celebrate, the progress that you have made, and then you change and then you continue from there. So it's just this idea of just having just ongoing support, this ongoing championing, and this ongoing encourager to help you on the journey so that you don't feel like, how do I, discern, all these different decisions that I need to discern. One other thing I would say too is depending on which coach that you go with, they can have specific tools for your specific challenge that you're facing. And so there's a ton of different NLP type of tools or spiritual formation type of practices that you can actually do with your coach to help you get like immediate clarity or immediate results, so that in 45 minutes to an hour, like you have so much clarity to then build the progress and the momentum that you ultimately want to build. And so that's just another benefit of working with a coach.
So on a personal note, I've actually worked with a life coach prior. This was like probably 7 or 8 years ago. But there are a lot of people that are asking kind of how to look into getting a life coach or a career coach or something like that. And personally, like I used somebody that I knew, was part of like my kind of extended friends and family circle. So I knew them prior to, contracting with them for their services. But if you don't know anybody that is in this arena, or even if you do, but you're just trying to, kind of evaluate your options to look into getting a life coach or a career coach, are there things that people should look for, or like maybe red flags of like, hey, this might not be the greatest option to pursue?
Yeah. So one thing I would say is usually with any coach that's out there, they offer like a free discovery call or free clarity call. And so that's always a way for you to get to know the person that maybe you're interested in working with. So I highly recommend, signing up for that to see if there's a connection. One thing I would say as far as what you can look for is it a trusted brand that they're representing? How long have they been a coach for is another, thing to consider. What are some testimonials or some results that they can share maybe by phone or even on their website so that you can see that they've been in it for some time. Maybe understand like where they've received their training, if they're in alignment with ICF, which is International Coaching Federation, because that's the standard body. It's not a licensing body yet, but those are like the standards that they're working on creating it so that it can have high standards across coaching, right? The coaching industry. And so anytime you see ICF, it's very, very helpful to see, okay, but they have standards and core competencies that they operate by. And so definitely, see if if it's a brand that you trust, or if it's a person that you trust, how long they've been coaching for, and are they associated with ICF, International Coaching Federation, in some way. Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you for calling that out. I do want to say thank you to Chelsea, who just threw up a link to gritandvirtue.com/coaching in the chat. You beat me to it, so thank you for that. But yeah, absolutely take a look around, do your research. And I think that's a really good call out, is that if they don't offer any kind of like a free like introductory thing, then that research and that testimonials and kind of stuff becomes much more important, because you want to make sure that wherever you are spending not only your money but your time, yes, is it's something that's going to pay off for you as well as be beneficial. So yeah,
absolutely.
Okay, so this one, I really was interested in this question. What advice do you have for middle-aged women who are rediscovering their passions and starting or restarting their careers after raising kids? How do we walk in the confidence that life has given us, yet be open and fearless about a new beginning in what often seems a young woman's world?
Yes, this is so good. First off, like when you think about, an experienced woman, middle age, I would call her experience, because she's been through some life, right? She's been through challenges. And, one thing I would just encourage her is to really, like, even if you have to make a list of your life experiences, that adds so much value to who you are and your character, right? And so identifying, knowing like, this is who I am, and this is the challenges that I've overcome and the roadblocks that I've overcome. Allow that to give you a boost of confidence of like, I have some life experiences that I'm carrying with me. Also, you have experience in actual doing different things. I would assume that you've, had different careers or different jobs. And so your level of experience could be next level, because you've had the time to hone in on your skills or to master your skills. And so you know how to actually develop new skills even faster because you've been through that process. Right. And so understanding, okay, these are my life experiences, and, these are my actual professional experiences. And this is what I'm walking into in this season of life, halftime, right? Halftime. And like, okay, what can I do, with the rest of my life or the next season of my life? And so from an encouragement, confidence perspective, understand what you have. Understand your worth, and that there's a place for you, no matter how much of it, seem like it's a young woman's world. Like there's a place for you. And then when it comes to like restarting, I think is a beautiful place to be, where you get to dream about the things that you've once dreamt about, and consider, is it time for me to actually pick up that passion again, or to pick up that dream again, to go after, the things that I want to go after. And so I think it's a beautiful opportunity for you to reimagine what your season could look like and to feel like and to be like. And so have confidence in what you have to offer, and take that no matter what, opportunity, comes your way, and know that people want that experience and that confidence. And so just own it.
I think that's it's kind of interesting to me to see how many different ways we touch on kind of the same ideas and same like advice, kind of principles in so many of these chat and learns. The idea of focusing on those soft skills, like you talked about, like it's one of those things that gets very discounted by a lot of people, especially when you're looking to make a career transition or you're looking to come back to work. These soft skills are things that you develop just by being a person that exists in the world.
Yep.
And it's really important to remember, especially with people who are, let's say seasoned is another one that gets tossed around a lot. But if you have that experience, that's not something that any person can just pick up. It takes time to develop. It takes time to not only go through these things, but then to learn and grow as a result of them, which not everybody does. Some people go through things and they don't learn anything from it. So, taking stock of these things, these qualities that you have that don't come with a certificate, they don't come with a stamp of approval, is really important, because you can point out and say, well, I'm a mom, so I know how to balance a lot of tasks. I know how to be flexible. I know how to, reshape a plan on the fly. I know how to, there's a lot of things that you know how to do because of that experience. And so it's very important to not trivialize that, to make sure that you call out those things that you know how to do, that you have the ability to do. Because, people like myself who are not mothers, we might still have those skills, but they've been developed in different ways. And it's important to call out that not only did you take this situation, learn from it, and grow, but here's the experience that you got because of it.
That's right. Love that.
Yeah. All right. So, okay. What are some daily habits that help keep you grounded or excited about your work and aligned with your passions? I feel like this is something that people talk a lot about, especially when you're thinking in terms of like the long haul that may or may not be required to take something from an idea and move it into a passion and then a project.
Mm-hmm. So first of all, for me, journaling. journaling is definitely one of the things that help, keep me grounded right away. Just with the process of journaling, you get to have a conversation. With me, I use my journaling to have a conversation with God. And so it's just a tangible way to connect with the Father and, see the thoughts, see the prayers, see the answer prayer, all, written down. So I feel like my journal is like my therapist in a way. And so definitely, I think connecting with just what's inside of you, your desires, your dreams, like it's empowering to actually write it out. And so when you can write out like what your dream is, when you can write out what your mission is, what your desires are, it helps you just to begin to cultivate conviction towards that idea. And so for me, I have a lot of just conviction for serving women. And it's this sense of like, no matter what fears I have to encounter, no matter how much I have to step outside of my comfort zone, like I am committed for, the mission to be accomplished. And it's this sense of like grit, right? Like you have to have grit towards anything that you're that's worth pursuing, because it's going to take some grit, because you're going to go through a lot. And so another thing when I think about like what just helps keeps you grounded and also focus on where you want to go are the relationships that you surround yourself with. Because a lot of times when you have relationships that are so life-giving, and you feel discouraged, because will be seasons where you feel discouraged, the people around you can remind you of your purpose, can remind you of your mission. And so community and having like deep relationships, you don't have to have a ton, but having, one or two deep relationships that you can be completely open with and that know you and know your purpose and what you have on your life is really, powerful to have as a reminder when you don't feel like getting up and going after it.
Yes, for sure. I completely second you on the journaling thing. It's one of those things where I've always heard that if you take notes in longhand, actually writing them as opposed to typing them, it's helps the idea stick with you longer. And I kind of use that in concert with with going to therapy, to keep in mind, things that I'm trying to focus on that week, or something that bothered me that I want to make sure that I bring up later. It's kind of a way to keep things kind of rolling around in my head while still clearing space, so it doesn't feel like it's a big jumble up there. So yeah, I definitely second you on the journaling thing. Sylvia had asked, can coaching help you identify your passion or what could turn into fulfilling work later on? Now, for me, I say yes, because I've had this experience with a coach in the past. But is it, would you say that it's fair to say that not all coaches have that focus, and so that's something to kind of keep in mind of what you're looking for out of a coaching relationship?
Yeah, definitely not all coaches have that, niche. For us at Grit and Virtue, majority of our coaching clients, that's the challenge that they're coming with, right? And so that's the thing that we, love to help, women explore, and how to step out into, their passion and their mission. And so I would say, when it comes to career coaching, specifically, or if it's a life coach and you see on her website or his website, that talks about career and transition, like that'll give you a hint into the things that they can help you, actually with when it comes to coaching. And so coaching definitely can help you in that season of transition.
Okay, so we've got 7 minutes left. I'm going to try and get through as many of the questions we have left as possible. This person is talking about how they are pretty reserved and prefer to be in the background. However, many of my ideas and passions may require me to be in the public eye in order to fully invest in them. Is it possible to have a successful organization or career without being a public figure these days? How might I balance putting my full self into making my ideas public without making myself more public than I'm comfortable with?
Yeah. And so I think this comes back to what your vision is, right? Because there are tons of businesses and companies out there. And of course, on social media, you see more of the personal entrepreneur and the personal lifestyle brand, right? But then there are so many other brands that the brand for their ethos, for their mission, and you have no idea who the founder is, right? Or who the co-founders are. And so I think it depends on the type of business that you want to go after and that you want to actually cultivate. With Grit and Virtue, I feel like we have a good balance because, Grit and Virtue is highlighted. I would say a lot of people don't even know, me personally, who runs Grit and Virtue. And it has, worked out for us specifically. And so I think it all depends on, where it is that you feel called to, as far as working, in the public eye or behind the scene, and really just elevating your mission, elevating your ethos and what you represent. That has to be very strong for people to connect with.
Absolutely. And keep in mind, guys, like Charlene said, there's a lot of different ways to pursue these kinds of things, and a lot of different ways that people market themselves or their ideas or whatever the product that they are trying to, or product or service they're trying to provide is. I kind of refer to it as doing the full Beyonce, where you have a very curated public image. It feels like you're letting people into your own kind of personal life, but there's very strong boundaries there. You don't see everything, but what you do see is what that person has decided to put into the public eye. So if you do feel like you need to go with that more personal touch, it might be a little bit more difficult to navigate, but once you set those boundaries, then you can feel like you're able to share parts of yourself or share your enthusiasm and your passion for this idea to help other people, get on board. But you also don't feel like you have to, completely open up the entirety of your life, the entirety of your existence to public eye, public scrutiny, whatever. So there is that option if you feel like your personal, placement in part of that marketing would help without feeling like you have to go full bore.
Really good.
Thank you. All right, so this person wrote in saying, God has placed a desire in me to become a health coach. Do you have any tips to share about your coaching experiences? What barriers did you have to face and how did you overcome them?
Yeah, so specifically, like she's asking about health coach, but I will also say this goes for anyone who's stepping into a new career or a new skill set. A lot of time, especially if you see the outcome being that you have to be entrepreneurial with it, a lot of times we get excited when we're stepping into a new skill set or a new course that we're taking, or in her case, being a health coach, we get really excited with that. And we go ahead of ourselves and want to think about, okay, what happens after I graduate or after I complete? And your mind goes there and you're trying to figure out, say, for example, all the business side of things. Oh, I need a website. Oh, I need a name, and I call that, like wrestling of like playing office. Right? Like you're playing office when you have to really be focused on like mastering the skill set and really working on your skill set so that you can build up your competence and your confidence. So at the end of your training, then you can start dabbling in, okay, what's my next step? Am I going to take this into an actual job setting, or will I actually take this into my own, own practice or entrepreneurial venture? And so the number one thing that I would say that I failed into was working on, working on the business like too premature. And so when I started my coaching practice, my first coaching practice, it was about 9 years ago. And I was already thinking like branding and design and website and all of those things. When in reality, looking back, I would just like completely forget about all of that and focus on building up my confidence and my experience in the thing that I was studying.
I think that's a really good way to think about it, is like that playing office, because you're right. It is really easy to focus on those outward symbols of like, oh, it's a business. This is official. I mean, like I remember starting a business with a friend several years ago, and we spent so long trying to figure out business cards. And it was great. And they were necessary, but not at the time. Like we kind of put the cart before the horse, you know? So it's definitely one of those things that is hard to think about, because you think you're doing the right thing because you're getting off the ground, you're getting everything started. But if you don't have that basic, that basic competency to start with, then you're kind of building up this house of cards that doesn't have any other support under it. So, it kind of helps, it undercuts what you're trying to do. All right, so let's go for our last question here. This is a longer one, so we'll try and get through it. This person had asked, what are some roles that balance a problem-solving and customer-centric approach? I love to help people and have been in customer-facing roles my whole life, but would love to rise above that and take on more strategic system, process, and organizational decisions to have a wider impact. So this question I thought was really interesting, because it's the kind of thing that a person would take to a life coach or to a career coach. And obviously, like, leaving room for some of the generalities and the situational specifics of this. Right. How would you tackle this question if a client were to bring it to you?
Yeah. So, specifically with what the time that we have here, one thing I would just come out and say is, any role that is like a director or executive level, like you're automatically positioned to bring strategy to your role and to your position, right? And so if you can see if there's roles, within your industry or the industry that you want to enter that requires that level of leadership, then it will also require that level of strategy thinking. And of course, you're solving for your people, the people that you're serving. Another career, or two other career ideas around like customer centric and also problem solving. One is a UX designer. Not sure if design, is a skill set that she has, but when you think about user experience design, you're designing experiences for the end user. And so therefore you have to go and research, and you have to talk to your, customers and potential customers to design the best possible experience. Another career role or position is success manager, like a customer success manager or customer success team, where you have to be responsible for the success of the customers that you're working for, right? And so in that, you have to be strategic and you have to be forward facing. And so those are just some, really quick ideas as far as different roles and positions that you can consider.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of your wonderful, tips and tricks with all of us. I know we're a little bit over on time, but I do just want to say a huge thank you to Charlena for joining us and taking time out of your busy day to be with us today. And a huge thank you to all of our community members who registered for today's event, submitted amazing questions, commented and joined in and participated today. Thank you so much. Charlena, is there anything that you'd like to leave our audience with before we sign off for today?
Actually, yes. There is a part of a speech from Nelson Mandela that I would just love to read off as a way of just encouraging everyone that's listening.
Absolutely.
Okay. It's called Our Deepest Fear. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, or fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small doesn't serve the world. There's nothing enlightening about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. You were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Nelson Mandela.
Thank you for sharing that with us. It's one of those quotes you never get tired of hearing, and it always gives me goosebumps. So thank you for that. Thanks again to everybody who joined us today. We are at an end of today's Chat and Learn, but we will have more events happening tomorrow. Don't forget to check out some of the links that I put up into the chat where you can check out our upcoming events. We've also got a virtual career fair this week. So please take a look at PowerToFly.com, and do not hesitate if you have questions. You can reach out to hi@PowerToFly.com. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.